Welcome back to the Constitutional Clarion. In Australia, we vote by marking a ballot paper with a pencil. Why? These days we do almost all of our other official interactions electronically by our computers or our phones. That's how we submit our tax returns and otherwise deal with governments through MyGov. It's how we most commonly do our banking, deal with our superannuation, or work from home. So why do we use a pencil and paper for voting? The use of pencils leads to endless conspiracy theories that there is secretly an army of vote riggers armed with erasers who rub out pencil marks and change the votes. The problem with this theory is that you don't actually hand your ballot paper over to officials to be altered. You deposit your vote in the sealed ballot box. That seal is only broken on the ballot box after the end of polling when the box is opened for the counting of the votes. And that happens in front of lots of people. The members of the public who are employed for the day to man the polling booths and the scrutineers appointed by the various political parties who come to watch the count to ensure it's all done correctly. There's actually no opportunity for anyone to rub out a vote. But why a pencil rather than a pen? The answer is that pencils are cheaper to buy and you can store them between elections and use them again. They don't run out of ink and they don't blot ballot papers or smudge the numbers when the ballot's folded to be put into the ballot box. The AEC also says that pencils don't run dry like pens do in tropical conditions. I actually had no idea that pens do run dry in tropical conditions, but then again, I don't live in the tropics. However, if you are really distrustful of the use of pencils, you're perfectly entitled to bring your own pen and mark the ballot paper with that. There are people on social media who claim that they're afraid to use a pen in case their vote is then treated as informal. But that's nonsense. There's no law at the federal level in Australia saying that a pencil has to be used. This is just what's supplied by the AEC out of economic and practical efficiency. Section 206 of the Commonwealth Electoral Act says that each voting compartment must have an implement or method for voters to mark their ballot paper. It does not specify pencils. So bring your own pen if you want. It won't invalidate your vote. Australia is not the only country that uses pencils. The Canadian press reported a few days ago that there were conspiracy theories there about the use of pencils in the forthcoming Canadian election. Either that your vote wouldn't count unless you used a pencil, or that your vote would be altered and erased if you did use a pencil. Elections Canada advised people that ballots count regardless of whether you use a pen or a pencil. It noted that all ballot boxes are only unsealed once it's time to count the vote, and that this is done publicly in front of witnesses. Pencils are provided for voting, it said, because pens can dry up or leak and spoil a ballot paper. But people can use their own pen if they want. What about the UK? Yes, they provide pencils too at polling booths for exactly the same reasons: reliability and preventing ink blots. And yes, there are conspiracy theories there about it too. It's even got its own gate, as in pencil gate. And it's alleged that it's MI5 that sits there changing all the votes. And I can just imagine James Bond wielding his eraser. Okay, all right, James Bond was MI6, but let's face it, if you're going to alter the outcome of an election by rubbing out pencil marks, you'd need to second some extra spooks from MI6 too, wouldn't you? The theory was prolific in the Brexit campaign amongst the Leave voters until they actually won, whereupon every pencil vote was utterly legitimate because, of course, fraud only happens when you get a result that you don't like. Again, people in the UK can use pens if they want. There's no prohibition on their use. And this raises another curious question. Exactly why and in favour of which party are election officials or MI5 or whoever supposed to be changing votes in order to favour them? Are they instructed to favour the government? And if so, why then do governments quite regularly change? They can't be very effective at doing this task, can they? But why pens or pencils and not computers? Surely we should have e-voting by now. It would be cheaper than hiring and staffing polling booths. It would be easier for voters, including those who have to work on polling day. It would be more convenient for those who are travelling or out of the electorate or even those out of the country. It would be useful when there's a pandemic or natural disasters like floods and bushfires, when requiring people to travel to vote can be problematic. Well, there are three basic reasons why electronic voting is not used in federal elections in Australia. The first is security. Online voting could be compromised by foreign actors or even domestic political actors who wish to alter the results. No matter how many times we are told that particular computer systems are safe and unable to be hacked, we do find that our personal details held by large and trusted institutions and corporations are indeed hacked and misused. The second reason is public trust. We have enough people already carrying on about pencils and the possibility that someone might be sitting there rubbing out numbers on ballots. Imagine the damage to public trust in the election process that could occur if there was a real capacity to interfere with the outcome on a substantial scale across the country, especially when there were no paper records to double check the outcome against. With voting by paper, the counting can be publicly viewed by scrutineers. It can later be double checked by different people if a controversy arises. When it's done by online voting, there is no real public scrutiny to reassure people as to its accuracy. But the third reason is actually the biggest hurdle. This is the reliability of electronic voting on polling day. Computer systems crash, especially when they're overloaded with people all using them at once. Remember the great online census fail of 2016? No one can guarantee the reliability of online voting, whereas pencils and paper have reliably worked over centuries. What happens when a voting system crash occurs on election day? Well, we have a fair idea because such a problem did occur during New South Wales local government elections in 2021. At the time, voters were only permitted to use the New South Wales iVote system in limited circumstances, such as if they had a relevant disability, if they were a silent voter, if they did not reside within 20 kilometres of a polling place, or if they were absent from their council area on election day. At the previous local government election, 234,401 people had cast their vote by the iVote system. But the New South Wales Electoral Commission was rather surprised in 2021 when more than 670,000 people tried to vote using this system. The strain of the demand meant that some people did not receive the relevant security credential that they needed in order to vote before the close of voting. They were therefore disenfranchised. While the number of voters affected was relatively small, it could have altered the outcome of elections in 3 council areas, in Kempsey, Singleton and part of Shell Harbour. The New South Wales Electoral Commission therefore applied to the Supreme Court for a declaration in relation to the validity of those elections because it was concerned that the outcome had been compromised by the iVote failures. The court held in New South Wales Electoral Commissioner and Kempsey Shire Council No. 2 in 2022 that due to the failure of the iVote system, these elections had not validly been held. The elections were void and fresh elections were required. The failure in iVote's operation could have had a material effect on the outcome of the elections. Because a system of proportional representation was being used, it would not have been fair to hold by-elections in relation to individual councillors, so all the seats won in those 3 elections were affected. This resulted in significant costs for the councillors, candidates and the political parties affected, as well as the inconvenience for voters who had to go to the polls again. The 3 elections were re-held on the 30th of July 2022. Most of the same councillors were re-elected, although there were 2 councillors who were defeated and replaced by others. One consequence of this debacle is that the I-vote system was not used at all for the next state election in New South Wales because it was deemed to be too unreliable. At the federal level, the Commonwealth Electoral Act does not permit electronic voting. So, in Australia, we stick with paper ballots at the federal election, along with pencils or pens, as you wish. The pencil, therefore, remains mightier than the keyboard, at least when it comes to voting in federal elections. Thank you for watching the Constitutional Clarion, and I hope this solved a mystery for you when you're wondering about why there's a pencil in the polling booth. And as always, I look forward to seeing you again next time. Goodbye.